Audacity in three, two, one.
Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Barbell Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Christina Lynn, and I'm here with my co host, Marissa Roy, and a special co host. I have my son in his little bassinet right behind me. So if you ever hear any squirming like he is right now, that's who's in the background. But we're going to be taking you back in time today and talking about the top 10 things we wish we had known when we first started our fitness journey.
Yeah. And I gotta say, still not used to it yet, hearing you say the word my son.
I know. I'm not even used to it. It's weird.
Yeah, very, very strange, but that's awesome that he's here with us. So yeah, no, this will be a nice little reflection. I think it's just some like general lessons learned, and I'm sure we're missing like 80 more, but we'll get through maybe the top 10 today.
Yeah. And I know that we've definitely touched on a few of these, if not all of them, in probably multiple different episodes. So it'll be nice to kind of condense them all into one.
Yeah, I agree. Cool. Well, let's get into number one. And I was actually just talking about this with some clients earlier today, but number one, we have, and these are not necessarily in order of like importance either, I will say.
That's a good
But
thing to point out.
yeah, but number one is weights before cardio. And basically, most people think I want to lose fat, I'm gonna do some cardio, I'm gonna start running, all that. But in all reality, the number one thing we can definitely do to lose body fat, keep it off for good, is lifting some heavy ass shit.
Yes. And so part of the reasons we talk about weights before cardio, and I think that also goes not just as in like you should prioritize weightlifting before you prioritize cardio, but also if you're going to do cardio, because again, we don't want to say that all cardio is bad or anything like that. We definitely want you to implement it a little bit. It is good for heart health, endurance, all those things. So if you are going to implement cardio, we actually recommend that you do your weight training first and then cardio second. The reason being is you're going to have a lot more effort that you can exert for your weight training session because that should take priority. So I think that's actually kind of like a cool number one because it's like you should prioritize weightlifting, but if you're going to do cardio, you should also do it before you do your cardio.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was kind of explaining this too, just from the psychology of how we often tend to think about weights versus cardio. And like, especially when we're talking about like trying to lose fat, we're like, okay, well, if I'm trying to lose fat, it's calories in versus calories out, which is true. But they say, well, that means I need to burn as many calories as possible. True. But that doesn't mean jump on the treadmill and try to burn as many calories as you can in that one session, because what weightlifting actually does is, your watch might tell you, which that is a whole nother rabbit hole we won't get into. Your watch might tell you that you're burning 200 calories in an upper body or lower body like session or something with your weights. And so you're like, this wasn't worth it. Like, this was such a waste of my time because I didn't burn enough calories. But what you don't see and what your watch cannot calculate is your muscles recovering for the next 24, 48, 72 hours. That's expensive. Like, it costs energy. Your muscles are literally burning calories trying to recover from that session. So the entire time that you're sore, you're not back to 100% yet, that's all literally calories being burned from weight training that you're not seeing on your watch or on your treadmill, right? And so, yes, you might be able to burn 600 calories in an hour doing cardio, but what if you burn, 3 times more than that from a really heavy training session that you put your whole effort into? You can't see it with, with a watch or any smart tool unless you're like in a really fancy scientific lab where they have you like in a ward. But but if you're not doing that, which most people aren't, you can't see it, but you have to trust the process that weightlifting is going to be better for your overall goals of losing fat, both from a calorie standpoint, but also from having more muscle as well.
Yeah, I was going to say also from a physique standpoint, because you can run your you can run yourself into the ground and you might look like you might lose weight, you might lose a little fat, but you're also going to kind of have that like skinny fat physique. So this is what I battled with for a lot of my early days in fitness is I would prioritize cardio and I didn't really do a whole lot of weights. I thought I was, but I'm not going to, which will bring us into number two. But I just kind of looked skinny fat because I wasn't building muscle, because I thought the same thing, that I need to do a whole lot of cardio in order to lose a bunch of weight. So in order to have that nice toned physique that a lot of people want, you need to build muscle. So that is the number one reason we talk about prioritizing weightlifting over cardio.
Yeah, it's interesting when I think back. I remember when I like first started going to the gym, which was literally in high school, like after school. I I was like I had a phase where I was on excuse me, where I was on Tumblr and like had my little Tumblr page of like all of these women and their bodies, and I was like feeding into all that toxic stuff, right? But I saw those bodies that were super toned and like muscular but not too muscular, and like that's what I really liked at the time. And I always thought like, oh, I just need to lose more weight, and eventually if I lose enough, then all of that muscle will show up because I thought I had muscle. I was a freaking stick. I had no muscle, and if I just kept losing, I would just become more and more and more skin and bones, which is what happened when I was in high school. So, lesson learned there. I think a lot of women think that they have muscle when they maybe have like put a little bit of time or energy into like doing some machines at the gym, when really it's like, no, you probably actually don't. I don't know the nicest way to tell you that, but you actually should probably spend a lot more time and energy trying to build muscle, and you're actually going to end up looking a lot leaner as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that that transitions us really nicely into number two, which is you can lift heavier. And oh my gosh, I wish that I had known this. And there's something going around Instagram right now where it's talking about like women or moms, where it's like you bring in these heavy groceries, like you lift your kids up, your 35-pound kid, you're doing all this stuff, and then you go to the gym and you lift 5 pounds, where it's like you
Yeah.
you can lift heavier. And not only that, but it's just so much better for you, like speaking like at a functional level for just everyday activities. But again, I fell victim to this. I would go to the gym and I'd lift my little 5 pound weights because I just didn't really know how to push myself. And then I think in the back of my mind, I also had that like big misconception that if I lifted heavy, that I was going to just get, huge and bulky and look like this super jacked female. And I thought, ugh, no, I just want to look toned. I don't want to look super muscular. And kind of like what we talk about now is it takes so much time and so much effort to build muscle, and it's just not going to happen overnight the way we think it might. And I think the other misconception that a lot of women do is they start to lift heavy, and maybe they start to eat a little bit more, and then they think that they're getting bulky, but they're just putting on like a little bit of muscle and a little bit of fat, but it's not to the extent that they think it is. But yeah, you can lift heavier, you can push yourself. And again, you're not going to just like all of a sudden work up to like a 300-pound squat or like anything like that. It's going to take a lot of time, but more than likely you can exert yourself a lot harder.
Yeah, I think about this one, and I think I actually circumvented this mistake. But it's actually interesting because I've fallen into multiple times, time frames and periods where I did kind of sandbag my training and I wasn't lifting as heavy as I could. And then I would reset and be like, okay, like this is not my full effort. What am I doing here? But at the very, very beginning, the first thing I did when I started getting into weightlifting was taking the like strength class in my high school. And so I did that, and luckily the class, and I say luckily because like it's just the environment that I probably needed to make myself go heavier and be stronger. It was 90% boys and it was like me and two other girls in the class. So like basically we all tried to like show each other up, and like anything that I could do a little bit more than or close to what the guys could lift, I was like, hell yeah. So like just being competitive. And then the first thing I did, and I said this on our first ever episode, so we're coming really full circle here, but the first thing I ever did for strength training, like formally at the gym, was a program that was free on bodybuilding.com. And it was Jim Stepani's 12 weeks to size. And I knew I was skinny at the time. I still had some body image issues, but I was like, you know what? I want to be freaking jacked. So I actually was just like I think I had read enough messages on Instagram from like other influencers that I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure I won't get bulky. I think I'm just going to get like really lean and toned and strong from this. And like, if I get a little bulky, that's okay, because I'm kind of skinny. So I went into it with that mindset and I ran that program. I actually like really did build a lot of strength with that. So I think I started off on the right foot there. But even, the lesson learned here throughout is there, it's been what, like 7 years at least since that time, since 2015. So, there's ebbs and flows, there's peaks and valleys. And in those valleys, I've noticed that like I'll get into ruts where I will kind of half-ass my training. I'll get into ruts where I'm not going as heavy as I can, or I'm just showing up and going through the motions, but I'm not really doing much else. Like even like when I transitioned to training in the mornings, that was a big thing I was going through, was like being able to push myself once I was actually there consistently in the mornings. So, even throughout your journey, you're going to have to sit there and check yourself and be like, am I putting in the effort that I need to put in to progress? And the more and more and more advanced you get, the harder that's going to be, because you're already so strong and you've already kind of gotten close to your limits. So how much stronger can you really get? Like you have to really push yourself to find out. So always try to push the envelope, and you can lift heavier. The best way to do that is with a real program with progressive overload, not just doing any random thing from day to day to day. But, that could be maybe something that you face at the beginning of your journey and a barrier that you overcome, or something that you face time and time again as your journey continues.
Yeah, so I would say the same thing when I was in college. Like I would just kind of go and do whatever. And then bodybuilding.com followed Jamie Eason's 12-week program. And I followed it fairly consistently, but I just didn't push myself as hard. And then it wasn't until I started doing like an actual like 5x5 program where I actually saw a lot of strength gain, and I saw a lot of like I made a lot of progress because I was so consistent with it and I was following an actual program, not just whatever I felt like doing that day. So number two, you can lift heavier and then follow an actual lifting program. So that brings us to number three, is kind of, I think this is something that you wrote, so I want to have you cover it.
Yeah, sure. So for number three, what I wrote here was kind of really being able to zoom out and look at the big picture, how like nothing, no one thing, no one solution, no one method is the end all be all. And so this is a trap that you can kind of fall into with any solution that's pitched to you, whether it's a program or macros or keto or, this specific way of training or that specific way of doing something. And I kind of want to reference like the Dunning-Kruger effect, where, there's a learning curve to every niche, right? And so in fitness, it's super common that like when you start lifting, you're like, oh my God, it's awesome. I want to learn everything about it, right? But I know nothing. So you research, and then like I definitely had a pretty substantial amount of time where I felt like I've researched so much, I know so much, I know freaking everything, I'm the boss at all this fitness stuff. So I was preaching and preaching and preaching everything that I thought I knew. And then the drop off here, the Dunning-Kruger effect, is the drop off of when you feel like you know everything. And then like all of a sudden you get to the point where you've learned so much that you realize you actually don't know jack shit. And so you get like, you like dip into like just rock bottom where you're like, oh my God, I thought I knew so much, but like this is such a bigger rabbit hole than I thought. There's so many contextual nuances and things that I just don't know about, that like, how the heck could I ever really know anything? And then getting over that is like understanding that like you're constantly learning, and like you can know a lot, but still have a lot to learn. And like that's kind of the evolution of it. But I think, especially when you're starting out, and what I've learned that has really made a big difference is understanding that there's no one fix, and everything, the answer to every question is it depends. And something that me and my friend and Aaron had joked about at dinner the other night, we were like chatting about some people who kind of are on that peak before the drop on the Dunning-Kruger effect that we know with lifting. And we were basically trying to help our friend understand like how to know when someone is kind of in over their head versus is like giving you a good, genuine answer. And we were just like, really, like, don't really trust anyone who doesn't start the answer to a question with "it depends on blank." So like really when it comes to, I used to think that macros were the end all be all. It was the only thing I gave my clients because I was like, this is what fixed everything for me. This is what I do all the time. This is the answer. So everybody needs to use macros and we'll just be fine. Right. And I did that for a few years. And it helped a lot of people, but also it didn't help a lot of people. And so kind of just having that bigger picture understanding of like on Instagram, on social media, no one thing is going to be your big fix. You stop rushing into things and thinking that like that's the one solution. Just, be open to change, be open to learning more, and you'll get so much more out of your journey because of that.
Yeah, and I think this is a really good time to emphasize that so that we just recorded, which is to get rid of your timeline. Because I think a lot of
Yeah.
times people put themselves in this like, I have to do XYZ in this time frame, and then that's it. Like they think like once I follow this program or once I do this and I'm going to be happy or I'm going to have my body and then I can just stop. So I see this a lot with people who maybe they have a wedding coming up or maybe they have like a trip coming up and they want to get into the best shape of their lives. And then when that is over, they feel like they're done and they don't have to do anything anymore, or they feel like a failure if they didn't reach all of their goals. So that would be a big thing that I think it's kind of, and we talk about the park bench mentality too, is just kind of like going and implementing things and continuing to do that for, day to day, and finding a lot of like enjoying that mundane process. I think that'll be really, really helpful too.
Yeah, yeah. Both definitely listen to that episode 70 for sure. That's a good one.
Yeah. So
Um,
number 4 is stop trying to cut and build muscle. So it's, and I feel like which one did we just talked about this before, is kind of like labeling cutting and building muscle. But if you actually are in like, it's hard to do those things at the same time. It's hard to eat in a deficit and also eat at a surplus and then try to build, but also cut at the same time. Now, of course, is it possible? Yes. Have we seen it happen? Yeah, we have, with like newbies, beginners, or every now and then you'll get someone who's just like an incredibly hard worker and they'll do that. But for a majority of people, you have to pick and choose. And a lot of people choose cutting. They choose cutting over bulking because it's scary. They don't want to put on all this weight. And, with cutting, it's in dieting, it's more, uh, sorry, Colton just farted. um, but a lot of people find that instant gratification from dieting, where it's like, you get a lot of dopamine hits and you can keep going. And so it's hard to spend time also trying to build muscle. So try to pick and choose, and then also, if and when possible, spend more time in a building phase than dieting.
yeah, I think the only thing I have to add on to that is like to whatever you do, pick it and stick to it. Because I know
Yes.
so many people who are like, I'm gonna bulk 2 months later, I'm gonna cut 2 months later, I'm gonna bulk 2 months later. And it's just back and forth for like ever. And then guess what? Their physique gets freaking nowhere because they don't spend enough time in any phase to actually see a measurable result from it. So they're just spinning their wheels and spinning their wheels, and nothing is actually changing. They just keep changing direction back and forth because they feel like they haven't found the answers. So they need to do something different, or they jump from program to program to program, or diet to diet to diet, and nothing works. So the solution there is you have to pick something and stick to it for an uncomfortable amount of time.
Yes. And I actually had a client who recently was going through one of our programs, and she was talking with me, and she was wrapping up the end of her 12 weeks. And she was like, before I came to you, she's like, I realized that I have not done anything other than dieting. Like, at least, she might have spent time at maintenance or maybe in a surplus, but in her mind, she was still in like a dieting mindset. And so taking that time to be very intentional and to put on muscle and to build. And she goes, I want to do that. And she goes, but I know that I'm not going to be able to do that myself because I'm going to want to fall back into those dieting habits. And she was like, so I want to sign on for an additional year because I want someone to hold me accountable and help me through the mental aspect side of things, and then also not let me go back to dieting. So if you're one
Yeah.
of those people, having someone, having a coach, they can really, really help you through that process, because it is a huge, huge, huge mindset battle.
Yeah, it's literally like that's it, right? It's like just, hey, I want to diet now. No, actually, we need to wait. I have someone in mind that I'm thinking of. I don't know if she's a really, really loyal listener to the podcast, but when she worked with me, we needed a reverse diet. And then I pushed her. So that was like probably maybe this time last year, maybe a little bit later. But it's been, I mean, we've worked together for 40 something weeks now. So it may be, close to a year, right? So about this time last year, she needed a reverse diet. And then I was like, we're going to stay at maintenance and we can cut next year. And she was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I don't, I'm like, I respect her a lot for sticking through it with me because I'm like, damn, I don't know if I would have been able to do that in her shoes. Right. But she trusted, she trusted, she trusted, and she built and she built and she built, and she just stayed consistent for the whole year. And now we're cutting and we're 10 weeks in or so, or 11 weeks in, and easiest cut of her life. Weight is falling off. Like her metabolism is on fire. Like she's not even cutting calories that low because like she did all the work ahead of time, and she's having no problem adhering because she built the foundation. And so it's just like her mind is blown every week. She's like, I can't believe I'm like sticking to it so well. Like I thought this nutrition thing would be my problem and blah, blah, blah. Like, nope, super easy because she put in the time and the work ahead of time, which I like really applaud her for that, because before she was just trying to eat as low carb as possible all the time, kept going off track on the weekends, and was just spinning her wheels, and never got anywhere because of it.
Yeah, I actually have a client, almost similar situation, where she came to me and she wanted to get in the best shape of her life. And I was like, hey, let's just spend some time at maintenance. And she started responding super well. So I was like, hey, let's actually increase your carbs. Like, let's increase your carbs. And every single week I felt like, dude, you're dropping weight. Like, we need to increase carbs. And she got up to over 300 carbs. And she was like, I've never eaten this much in my entire life. I don't understand how I look like this still. And I was like, yeah, because you're responding really well and you're training really hard. And that's a big part of it is, a lot of times if you're training like that, you need to eat, which will bring us into number 5. But
Yeah.
she, same thing, started cutting, and she is not even as low as when we started her reverse diet. And she is so much leaner than when she was when we first started working together. So don't like, yeah, it is so beneficial to spend time out of a diet. And that brings us right into number 5. Don't be afraid of food. You need to eat to grow. And I wish I could take my my high school and like college self and shake myself and let me know, like, you need to eat. Like, it's okay to eat. Don't be afraid of food.
Yeah. And I think when we say the word grow, it scares a lot of people, right? We say grow and they're like, oh no, getting fat, right? And really what we mean by grow, I I take that as like growing as a person. I take that as growing lean muscle tissue. And like I say lean because like I'm in the habit of doing that, like speaking in other people's language, but all muscle is lean. Like just muscle is muscle, muscle is lean muscle. But to add lean tissue to your body, that is growth, right? Hypertrophy is the growth of muscle fibers, and the addition of that to your body. And it's such a scary word because they're like, grow means getting bigger. Getting bigger is bad. I don't like that. But when we grow muscle, we burn more calories, as I explained with number 1, and we therefore are able to lose more fat and keep it off in the long run and look leaner, look more toned, have a tighter body composition overall. Because we have more muscle, our whole physique looks completely different in a good way. Our measurements go down, our clothes fit better. So when we say grow, we don't mean just get bigger, right? Get bulky. Like, don't be afraid of food. You need to eat to fuel your metabolism. You need to eat to actually see the results you want to see when we're talking about losing fat and leaning out. So, I don't want that to be misconstrued of like, don't be afraid of food. You just need to bulk, right? Like, no, like it's actually like to be at maintenance for most people is way higher than they've ever actually eaten. Like a lot of clients that come into our program need a reverse diet. So they're eating 13, 1400 calories a day. And we bring them up to 18, 1900, 2000. And they're like, oh my God, like, how am I losing weight? And I'm like, because like maintenance is actually like 21, 2200 calories for you. Like you're still in a deficit. And like it's just crazy to me how warped we have it of like, oh, if I want to like stay where I'm at, I can only eat 1500 calories. Like, nope, sorry. It's actually amazing what the body can do when you give it the food that it needs.
Yeah. So I think a lot of times what happens is people think, oh, so I need to eat to grow. So therefore I need to start eating like a crazy amount of food. And when you do that, you're probably going to put on a lot of fat very quickly. So that is one of the reasons we implement a reverse diet, is take things slow the same way you would diet. So if you want to go back and listen to episode number 5, we talk all about reverse dieting and maintenance. But slowly building up your food intake, that way you're not just going like completely overboard, and that way you're not putting on a lot of excess fat. So that is, I mean, you can go all through that episode and listen to like how to actually do it, but just I guess just a little shortcut, just like slowly increase your food intake over time, which I think brings us into number 6 really nicely, especially for our females. You're probably not eating enough protein. So I followed the whole like clean eating phase back in, it was 2013, 14 or whatever that was. And so I thought I was eating a lot of really good protein sources. I thought I was eating enough protein, because I had a protein shake every day. So I thought that meant I was hitting my protein. And it wasn't until I started tracking macros. And again, we talk about how you don't need to track macros, but I think at some point in your life, you probably should, just to get an idea of like what balanced meals look like, what food looks like, and just to get an idea of what actually like how much you need to be eating to reach your goals. But I was definitely not eating enough protein. And that is something that is going to help you build muscle and going to help you grow. So if you're a female, more than likely you need to increase your protein intake. And just an easy, good rule of thumb is just 1 gram of protein for pound of body weight. So there are a lot of different formulas that you can input, but that's just a good, easy, super easy rule of thumb. Eat more protein.
Yeah. It's hard too, because like the food industry is like has caught on to like this protein thing where everyone's like, yeah, you need more protein. So like food labels will be like, this is high in protein, and it has like 5 grams of protein, or like, every Healthline article is like, beans are a good source of protein and leafy greens are a good source of protein. So like all that stuff
How
is like
much, I'm just thinking how much like a bowl of spinach you need to eat.
like a freaking truckload, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, yes, relative to the general weight of the food, it does have a lot of protein, right? But in terms of our daily needs, it doesn't. And so we're kind of like tricked into thinking like, oh yeah, I'm eating all these things that are high in protein. So like, why would I not be hitting my protein goal? And it's funny because we actually had a client on our team who sent a check-in, and they were like, yeah, this is the first week I've hit my protein in a couple weeks, every single day. And we went ahead and we looked into the food logs. Nothing was logged. Like literally nothing was logged in my fitness pal. So we were like, bro, how do you know you hit protein? Like you don't. And so it's just because we're eating things that are high in protein doesn't necessarily mean it adds up to our daily intake needs. So like Christina said, it's really important to, if this is a priority to you, right? And body recomposition and seeing these results come to fruition in your life is a priority to you, then it's most likely going to be beneficial for you to at least spend a couple of weeks, maybe a month or so at minimum, to track your food and really see what that needs to look like for you. You can learn a lot just by tracking to observe without even changing anything. So that's something I definitely recommend for a lot of people who are listening and they're like, I heard about this macro thing so much. You guys talk about it all the time. I have no idea where to start. Like literally just track everything you eat. Don't set any targets. Don't listen to the targets MyFitnessPal gives you. Just like start paying attention. I actually did this with Aaron's mom. And so she had been kind of in the low carb craze for like a while. Just always really, really stuck on like, I need to cut carbs. I need to cut carbs. I need to cut carbs. And I finally sat her down one day because I was like, listen, I love you and I need you to see real progress. Stop spinning your wheels. So I was like, what we're gonna do is we're gonna just track everything you eat for the next 2 weeks. I don't want you to change anything. I don't want you to do anything. Just start paying attention and like absorb the information. And I took a really slow and steady approach with her, and similar to how we do it with our clients, because just from that alone, she has been able to, in the past 3 months or so, 3 or 4 months, drop 9 pounds. Her blood sugar is down like multiple points down into a healthy range. She understands what's in her food, and she's been able to increase her protein to a really reasonable amount and is consistent with that every day. And it's like, I didn't ask her to do anything except observe. So like, look how powerful that is.
Yeah. And similar to my in-laws, I absolutely love them to death. And I try, and they've seen me prep and they've seen me like reverse diet, and they've seen me when I've been at a very intense like stage with counting macros and everything. But they also know, and we've talked about this before, like when we come home or we come to stay with them, they're like, we know that you guys eat a lot of protein. So we got, some deli meat, and we got you some eggs, and we're like, oh, thank you. And it's such a nice gesture. And we know that they're coming from a really great place. But for them, like they talk about, like increasing their protein intake. So she'll have like an egg for breakfast. And so it's
Yeah.
like, is that higher protein than like toast? Yeah, absolutely. Is it a step in the right direction? Yeah. But like they've never tracked before, so they don't know how much protein they actually need to be eating at every single meal, or even like during snacks and things like that. So it's just like you have this understanding of like, oh, eggs are protein or this is protein, but trying to see it all add up, and then how to like distribute it at different meals, so you're not just sitting down and eating like 50 grams, 60, 70 grams of protein at one meal. It's just really, really helpful. So that is, again, why we emphasize just trying to track to get an idea of how you can kind of move forward without tracking the rest of your life.
Yeah, you made me think of a client that she made me laugh so much. I forget who exactly it was, but she was basically saying like she went over to her family and they knew what she was doing with our program. And she was like, yeah, like I'm trying to get more protein in. And the mom was so cute. She was like, oh, more protein. I'll add shrimp to the meal that I'm making. Right. And it's a meal that's like, it's like pasta, butter and cream and like all this stuff, right? And so it's like, yes, there is shrimp in it, but she also fried the shrimp and it's also in like loads and loads of butter and cream. So she was like, I really appreciated what she tried to do, but it's like you don't know what you don't know. So like the intention was like more protein, but it was like also 80 grams of fat.
Yeah, step in the right direction, I guess. Better than no protein at all. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's a whole other story we could get into.
Yeah.
You can go into number 7.
Yeah, so number 7's fun and funny, kind of just for some comic relief, but like in all seriousness though, when we talk about, because Christina and I both competed a number of times in like physique competitions, but I also wanted to draw this out to like just regular diets too. It's pretty inevitable that the day after your competition, I will say definitely for competition prep, your first prep ever, and if you maybe the first time you do a really long diet that's arduous and you grind and you dig, right? It's pretty much, after your celebration meal, you're probably going to blow up, and you're probably going to see a pretty big jump on the scale and you're probably going to really feel it the next day. But the lesson learned from that is actually, the body's pretty amazing. One day of bad eating is not going to ruin your progress. It's how you react to that one day. 'Cause I remember my first show, I ate myself nearly to sickness that first night, and we had so much food. I remember it was this pizza that I had been dreaming of for freaking months, and then some ice cream, and I hadn't had dairy in like 6 months
Oh,
either. So I had this whole tub of freaking Ben and Jerry's with all the dairy, right? And I remember my stomach was just distended and bloated. It hurt. And the next morning I woke up and I was like 8 pounds heavier than the day before. And I was like, oh my God. But the lesson learned from that is like, luckily I had someone in my corner to tell me like, hey, just jump back on track, you'll be okay. The weight comes back off after a couple of days of being back on routine. Your body doesn't actually gain 8 pounds of fat. Like so much of that is water, digestion and stuff. But the day after your big diet, it's okay to have a celebratory meal. It's okay to eat to your heart's content that day, but it's about how you react to that. Let's call it a slip up, right? It's about how you react to that, how you bounce back from it, get back on track, that defines your results moving forward, not that day itself. And so that applies to even just falling off track on any random weekend. It's about how you react to that and how you mitigate that in the future, rather than the day itself where you quote unquote messed up.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good one, and obviously not everyone who listens to this podcast competes. So this can be if you are dieting and you go out and have a big meal with friends or family, or you go out or whatever it might be, and you eat a little bit more than you should, maybe you go a little bit overboard. The next day, having that expectation that more than likely your weight is going to be up, and it's not just going to be a little bit, it's probably going to be a couple pounds. But like Marissa was just saying, it's how you react. So as long as I think it really, really helps having that, like, this is probably going to happen. So if you are someone who does have a not great relationship with the scale, maybe you don't jump on the scale the next day. Maybe you give yourself a couple days, just because if that number is really going to mess with you, just don't do that to yourself. But if you do, you see it and you have that expectation, like this is probably going to happen, you see it happen, you're like, okay, I was more mentally prepared to see that. But then again, it's your actions the following day. So just like drinking a little bit extra water, going on, some extra walks, if you just have extra energy, not at a form of punishment, not, going, oh my God, I need to do all this cardio, or I need to reduce all my food intake. I should only eat salads, just having a better relationship with just like, it happened. I'm content with my choices because I wanted to eat a little bit, and then just moving on. And kind of like Marissa was saying, again, a lot of it is going to just be water retention. You're going to be a little bit inflamed, like you're going to have a lot of extra food volume in your stomach, and just kind of going about things as normal. I do like to say though, I do have some clients who will be like, oh, I know it's just water weight, or I know it's just, it's just this, it's just that, it's just this, it's alcohol, it's this. And they kind of start to justify their behavior. I think because maybe they've seen a lot of people on Instagram talk about that, which is good. I'd rather them do that than like punish themselves. But if you start to fall into that trap of doing that every single weekend, or doing it a lot more frequently, you're probably going to have progress stall.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're going to just run yourself in this cycle of like dieting through the week, having the weekend you eat overboard. Oh, it's just water. It's just this, it's just that. And it's just going to just be like over and over and over again, and you're just not really going to see progress. So while I really, really like this one, I also don't want people to think that it's normal to do all the time.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely something that can hold you back. So yeah, I'm kind of, like I said, it's the end of the diet. You have your one celebratory meal, but then we want to be consistent, right? We want to be
Yes.
consistent from week to week to month to month, and, have those slip ups be as minimal as possible, as much as we can whenever we're trying to, reach a particular goal. So yeah, that's a great point. Number 8 is one of my favorites, probably 8, 9, and 10 are like, oof, like hard hitters. So we'll kind of get through these. So sometimes less is more. So this could be in the sense of, your muscle recovery. So like being able to take a freaking rest day is a huge step for a lot of people who train like 7 days a week and never give their body a break. Sometimes doing a little bit less is actually helpful. Lifting volume. So like if you're working out for 2 hours, 6 days a week, I will say, I've been there. I literally, like, this is when Christina makes fun of me for like killing other people in the gym. It's because of like 2016, 2017 Marissa, who literally trained for 2 hours with like 10, 12 exercises per body part per workout. Like, oh man. But yeah, there's people that still do that, and they just don't know what they don't know. But now knowing what I know, I'm like, yes, I do 5, 6 core exercises per workout. It takes me 45 to 60 minutes. And I just put my all into those 5 to 6 exercises one at a time. Right. And I've gotten the most out of my lifting than I ever have before from that approach. And it almost seems too simple, but it really is the good way to go. And then finally, with less is more, I love talking about like total holistic stress management, because it really does play a role in your progress. So really learning how to mitigate your stressors, balance your whole life with your fitness journey, and not overload yourself and run yourself into the ground, is one of my favorite things to talk about, as you know.
Yeah, and I really, really love that you included this on our list because, again, something I wish I had been able to tell myself. But back in, I feel like your 2014, 15, 16 would have been really good friends with me back when I was in college too, because
Yeah.
I would do like 3-a-days.
Oh my
Where,
God.
yeah, I was literally crazy. I would do like intense hit cardio like first thing in the morning at like 6 or 7 a.m. before classes. I would go back to the gym to lift, and then I would go back to the gym to go like run a couple miles.
Oh my God.
I know, I was literally crazy. But it was, again, I thought that cardio was the answer to my like fat loss goals. And I was trying to get ready for like spring break when I was in college and, doing all these things. And yeah, I was just crazy. And of course, like my recovery was shit. Like I was super stressed. Like I wasn't eating enough. Like, so I got skinny and I was the least I had ever weighed since high school, but I didn't look good. I was that like skinny fat that we always talk about. And I just like, I wasn't happy. And I just should have been like, hey, like, let's just lift a couple times a week if you want to run. Cause at that point in time, I really liked running. It was kind of weird. Like, my husband and I at the time ran like an 8K. Like we were just,
Wow.
I know, super weird. But yeah, I wish I had told myself, like, you don't need to like do all of this movement, all of this time. Like you're probably better off just like getting in some extra steps. Like, but of
Yeah.
course I didn't know anything about meat, but yeah, less is more when it comes to physical, but also like the mental as well, like the mental aspect of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't have anything to add there, but we can jump over to number 9, which
Yeah.
is these just get deeper and deeper. So you need to work on your inner self as much as you need to work on your outer appearance. And as much as we want to make this journey all about the physical, you'll notice a lot of things that come up time and time and time again in these conversations and these podcasts are things like mindfulness, are things like self-talk, things like self-awareness. I was actually talking to someone yesterday who just joined our program, and she mentioned how the past couple of years having a daughter in the past 4 years has made her more self-aware because she's now aware of how her actions impact her daughter. And sometimes it takes, having a kid to like realize those things. But a lot of us go through life very unaware of our own habits, our own thought patterns, our own beliefs, our own downfalls and strengths. And that can be our biggest inhibitor to actually moving forward and making progress with our personal development, because that's what this whole journey is with fitness. It's personal development. It's just becoming a more well-rounded, disciplined, better version of yourself. And so if you don't have things like methods to regulate your self-talk, methods to become more mindful in your day-to-day, methods to become more self-aware and capitalize on that self-awareness by using it to make change in your life, those are things that are all internal. You don't see the physical result of those things, but they impact your journey arguably more than any diet or exercise strategy would.
Yes, I don't have anything to add because I think that that leads perfectly into number 10. So, gosh, we talk about this all the time, but it is not the physical end destination. Like once I lose X amount of weight, I'm going to be happy. Like once I get shredded, once I have a bigger butt, I will be happy. It's about the person you're becoming, and it's about the habits that you build, the lifestyle that you lead. And I wish I had known this early on because I wouldn't be so focused on trying to reach whatever my goal had been at that time. So I think a lot of times people will get into competing because they see these, super shredded competitors. They're beautiful, they're tan, they're in their sparkly bikinis, and they say, "Oh, I want to do that. Like once I compete and I have this body, like I'll finally be happy." Whatever. And it's not that one day, those 12 seconds on stage that brings you the happiness. It is the entire journey. So whether you are competing in a contest prep or not, or what you're in a lifestyle cut, or whatever it might be, it's about the journey. It's about overcoming whatever obstacles that you have in your way, going to the gym on days you don't feel like going to the gym, meal prepping when you feel like you don't have time, overcoming whatever it might be and becoming a stronger person. That is going to give you so much more happiness and fulfillment than having abs or losing those 10 pounds. And if you're not doing number 9, if you're not doing that inner work, if you're not focusing on your self-awareness, your self-talk, being mindful, and you lose those 10 pounds, you're not going to be happy. You're going to say, "Oh, well, maybe it's just another 5 pounds and I'm going to be happy." So you need to make sure that you're doing that other stuff alongside meal prep, going to the gym, doing your cardio, doing all those things in order to really find that happiness.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance. The chase, chasing whatever goal, versus like being able to kind of enjoy that process and be where your feet are at all times, right? And I think it's happiness and it's confidence that people often tie their physical appearance to, is once I look like this, I'll be happy. Once I look like this, I'll be confident, right? But especially with confidence, kind of what you touched on, right? It's about doing the things that you say you're going to do and actually following through on them, that builds self-confidence, because you have confidence when you know that if you say something, it's going to happen. And unfortunately, with health and fitness, this is something that we often, like, this is so common, or I'm going to just, I'll start my diet on Monday, or, I need to get healthier this year, or I need to lose weight this year. And we say things and we say things and we say things and we say, "Oh, my pants don't fit, I'm unhappy with how I look." But very, very few of us take action. And that lack of action is what leads to a lack of self-confidence, because when we stop taking action, we say, "Why didn't I do that? You piece of shit. Why didn't you like get up and do whatever you said you were going to do?" We shame ourselves, we guilt ourselves, and then that beats down our own self-image, our self-confidence. That cycle goes the other way. But when we follow through on what we say we're going to do, and many of us, we have kind of separate amounts of self-confidence in different areas of our life. So like, this is self-confidence,
Yeah.
like pertaining to your fitness journey, but like in work, you might be that person where anytime you say something, it gets done. So you might be like, "Yeah, I'm a totally confident person, I don't struggle with that." But what about in your fitness journey? If you haven't followed through on anything you said you were going to do, like you're struggling with that. So you can't just, and that's where people fall into it. They say, "Well, since I'm already confident, I just need to lose 10 pounds and then I'll be confident with my body." It's like, no, like it's transferring those skills that you have maybe in your workplace or with the rest of your life into this area, so that it can kind of bleed into everything else that you do and your confidence as a whole.
Yeah. And I mean, I have got so many examples, and I'm sure you do as well, from clients where, and just recently I had someone who, she's in a dieting phase, and she went on a bachelorette trip, and she was like, oh my God, she was pressured so much to eat all these foods that she didn't want to eat. She was pressured to drink all this alcohol that she didn't want to drink. And she was just around that environment. And there were a few times she was like, "Can you just remind me of my goals? Like, can you help me out here?
Oh,
Like, it's a lot of, it's a lot of pressure." And she came back and she goes, "I almost cried. Like, I came back and I expected, even just from being around those type of people and like not getting enough sleep." She's like, "I thought I would be up on the scale." And she goes, "This is the first time I've actually lost weight and I was adherent." And she was like, "I could cry just because I've never had this experience before." And that made her so much more proud of herself and her actions. And not only that, but more confident going forward, that if she's in a similar situation, she's like, hey, I've done this before. Like, I know how to do it. I know how to handle it. I have the skills. I have the mindset that I can do this, and it's not going to be as hard. So and I go back to like contest prep too. And like, it's not, I lost all this weight, or, I did all these things. It's like, I got up at 4 a.m. to do cardio before work, and I didn't want to do it, but I felt awesome sitting there at my desk knowing I had already done like a super hard thing for my day. I've already crossed something off my list. I went to the gym on a day that I was dragging ass because like I didn't want to go, but I went anyway. I had a super awesome session. Like, those are the things that you're going to remember from your contest prep. Like, and of course you're going to remember show day, but it's doing the hard things and like doing the things that you don't want to do, but you made a commitment to yourself and you're going to follow through. So all of that just builds so much confidence, and all of that is going to help you become a better person, probably a happier person as well.
Yeah. And I just, excuse me, I just have one example because this is what made me want to do this episode in the first place today. One of my clients on Wednesday, she checked in and she said, I had a come to Jesus moment this week. And I was like, oh boy, I can't wait to hear this. Right. And she's a very self-aware person, kind of has these good dialogues with herself too. But she said, she's been struggling because she's pregnant right now. And she is struggling to continue to keep regular exercise and strength training a part of her weekly routine. And the end of the week came around, she checks in on Wednesdays. It was Tuesday and she was going to work out then that evening. And she was basically right after work, like, am I going to do it? I'm tired. I don't really want to. I could not do it. And the light bulb went off for her when she said, I could just not, right? She was like, right. I could just not. I will live. Like the world will not end. I will continue living my life and I will be okay if I skip this workout. But then here's what like really hit me that was powerful. She was like, I could skip, but that's not in accordance with the person that I want to become and the person that I want to be. And ultimately, my life will go on if I don't prioritize my health and fitness, but I want to be a person who does prioritize their health and fitness. And that, what I pay for is to continue making that commitment to myself of this is the person that I want to be, and reinforcing those habits. And then she got a workout in and she was so happy on Wednesday. And it was just really cool to hear about because like, for a lot of people, I mean, obviously there are people where if they don't take control of their health, it could cost them their life. And that is another conversation. But for her, she could, not train regularly. She could not make it a priority. And she might have a harder time doing things down the road later in life. She might have a harder delivery. She might not be able to play with her kid in the capacity that she wants to, but she would live right? Like she would like be okay. But it's not who she wants to be. And that's what I want you guys to think about when you're listening to this episode is think about the person that you want to be. Think about what that person does, how that person behaves, what that person values, what they prioritize, and try to live in accordance with that person. If you do that, you'll end up at your physical destination. You'll get there. That's just kind of how that works. It's a byproduct of the person that you are. But think about that rather than the physical destination.
Yeah. And one more thing before we end, I think that if you're not doing that inner work, if you're not trying to work on yourself mentally and all you're doing is focusing on the physical, you're going to jump from program to program, coach to coach, and you're never really going to reach your end destination. Or even if you do have this crazy awesome physique, you're just not going to be happy. So making sure that you do that internal work along with the physical side. But not only that, not only are you going to eventually reach it, but you're probably going to be there quicker when you do that internal work. So, I mean, hopefully, if you are new to your fitness journey or maybe in the middle, hopefully you've learned some things from this episode. You're not making the mistakes that we did when we were super young and early on in our fitness careers. But yeah, guys, we hope that you enjoyed this episode. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. You can find both of us on Instagram. You can find me at Christina Fit and Marissa is at Marissa Roy Fitness. And thank you so much for listening. And we hope to see you back next week.